Hello, folks. My name is Tim Gates, and if this is the first time you've ever um, watched one of these little videos, we're reading the book A Journey, an attempt and sometimes struggle at being real in this world. And that's actually, we're doing a redo. I've been reading this, I've done a number of chapters now. But the first two episodes we did were strictly from my computer, just the mic and the camera on the computer, and the quality is pretty bad. So a dear friend was kind enough to loan me his video camera and mic, and said, "Hey, if you're going to do this at all, do it at least, halfway decent." So that's what we're trying to do here. And I've decided to redo those first two episodes. So today we're redoing episode 1, which is the preface or the preface, whatever you prefer, the introduction, chapter 1, which is entitled Strange Stuff, and chapter 2, A Disturbing Dream. Next go round we're going to also redo episode 2, and that'll be chapter 3, Making Promises to God, and chapter 4, Bon Voyage. So hopefully the quality will be a little better this time around. We'll leave those first versions in YouTube, just cause. So yeah, if this is the first time you've ever seen this, I was hoping Morgan Freeman would be willing to read the book, but we haven't been able to make that happen yet. And I don't anticipate we will. But so in the meantime, I've just been reading it. And it had come to my attention that there's a number of people out there that don't particularly want to read, but they would listen to an audio version of something. So we're going to give that's what we're doing here. For anyone who might prefer to listen to a book, we're kind of reading this. And there's mistakes sometimes, and sometimes I catch them, and sometimes I don't. There's commentary sometimes, which I get to do. Today, by the way, you may hear in the background, a couple days ago at work, a friend suggested to me that there be a little music playing in the background of these things. So I thought we'd give that a try, see how it works out. You're listening to Tim Weisberg. I think this album is entitled Live at Last, from probably around 76 maybe. So we're playing it on the old record player inside that cabinet, one that Carol, my wife, had when we were married, and it's still kind of hanging in there and is able to play our albums. So, wow, I guess we'll just kind of get going here. Episode 1, and let's make this happen. This comes from a journal entry dated 10/9 of 2015. Good morning, God. It's been a long time since I wrote in a journal. Think it's time to start doing it again. Yesterday really took the wind out of my sails. Still don't know what to think about the whole thing. Still don't know whether to laugh or cry. I've done both. It looks like I lost about 6 months and 35,000 words worth of writing. On the one hand, I'm not really a writer, so what difference does it make? On the other hand, I don't know if I've ever been so passionate about doing anything as I am, or at least was, about writing the memoir. It's so hard to know if this is some kind of divine intervention or just me being a total bonehead and losing all the data. Maybe a little bit of both. I really don't know. Carol and each of the kids have all been super supportive and encouraging, and they all want me to keep on writing and not be discouraged. they're looking forward to reading a finished story someday. Right now, I am very discouraged. In the big scheme of things, though, I've got as long as it takes to do this. I'll definitely be more careful about backing everything up. Oh yeah, Carol greeted me this morning with a verse from the song, "You Can't Roller Skate in a Buffalo Herd." It goes like this: "You can't roller skate in a buffalo herd, but you can be happy if you've a mind to. All you got to do is put your mind to it. Knuckle down, buckle down, do it, do it, do it." I think that's just what I needed to hear. Carol is the greatest. Until next time. Around 3 years ago, I started looking at a couple old journals from the 70s and then one written between 2003 and 2005. While rereading what had been recorded about 40 years and then more than 10 years from the past, I developed an overwhelming desire to start writing a memoir. Unquestionably aware of the privileged and wonderful life I've been given, I wanted to put together some kind of written record of it, something at least my wife and kids could have, and maybe even a few others might like to read if they found it interesting. Who knows? Some folks might even find that they could relate to a few of the adventures I'd had the good fortune of experiencing. Well, after having put pen to paper, actually fingers to computer keys, for several months, I was having lunch in a wonderful little Vietnamese restaurant near our home and was also doing a little work on the notes. I saved my document both to the computer and to a thumb drive as I'd been doing all along. This time, however, having absolutely no idea how, I somehow saved not the document I'd just been working on, but a version from about 6 months and 35,000 words prior. I'd overwritten my current copy with this old transcript and then saved it. All the work from the previous 6 months was gone. A bit later in the day, while trying to squeak in a little more time on the computer, it became evident to me what had happened. Talk about wanting to throw up. For the next few days, I certainly did. So here we were, deciding whether or not the last several months had just been a giant waste of effort, and wondering if maybe it was time to bag the whole idea of writing a memoir. Or should I just consider this as part of the great adventure and press on? I ended up trying to go with the latter. In the words of Roger Miller, as Carol lovingly sang to me, all you got to do is put your mind to it. Knuckle down, buckle down, do it, do it, do it. Kind of corny, but pretty good advice all the same. Who knows, maybe this little story will actually get written. My bonehead mishap versus journalistic reboot from God has even given me some motivation to start journaling again. I'm so glad there have been times over the last 40 years when I saw the value of writing things down. It has helped to re-recognize what a wonderful adventure life really is. If it weren't for those old journals, I wouldn't have had anything to help refresh so many wonderful memories today. I'm a fortunate guy to have so many good memories to remember. So, and I will tell you that in the end, now it's a year after the book has been completed and, and made available. There's a couple chapters that never even made it back into it. And really, I think it worked. I think it was just right. It worked out for the very best. With the exception of there's still some errors, some editing errors that I wish we'd have caught, but didn't. I mean, you read the thing a million times, and the little publishing company that I used, I would say, at any way, I would say the book I could have made sure it got much better editing. But at any rate, here we are, and it's what we got. And it worked out for the best that I lost all those, that 6 months worth and 35,000 words worth of writing. It was the perfect thing to happen. So, introduction. It was 1974, the summer after our junior year in high school. A sunny, peaceful, perfect day. Oh, a sunny, beautiful, perfect day for a few high school buddies to be cruising Point Defiance Park in my '64 Jeep Willys mail truck with, mind you, the steering wheel on the right side. What an undeniably awesome truck. Cream yellow, a black stripe across the sides, shag carpet throughout, and very cool astromags. Drinking beer, most assuredly smoking pot, it was the '70s after all, and taking turns sharing BAs with those poor, unfortunate, and unsuspecting drivers and passengers in the cars behind us. That's a bare ass for anyone from a younger generation. Suddenly, the Indian tapestry curtains hanging across the back of the back windows of the truck would part, and voila, a bare butt to greet you. Life, as most of us have found, is so full of unexpected surprises. Some welcome, some not so. We thought this was hilarious. I would have to say that I grew up a privileged kid. The youngest of 4 boys, I was the baby of the family. Mom and Dad were they were the 2 finest people I have ever known. They were kind and generous and honest. They were real. What you saw is exactly what you got. Dad grew up during the Depression on a farm in Deming, Washington, one of 6 kids born to Guy and Katie. They didn't have a lot. As was true of many young men of that time, Dad joined the military and was a veteran of World War II. His areas of military service included Pearl Harbor, Australia, North Africa, Palestine, India, China, and I'm not sure where else. On December 7th, 1941, my dad was aboard ship having left Pearl Harbor just 6 days prior. Thank you God, the unit he was with left Hawaii when they did. Dad was awarded the Air Medal by General H. Arnold, commander of Army Air Forces during World War II, and a pioneer airman who was personally taught to fly by the Wright brothers. The Distinguished Flying Cross was also pinned onto Dad's chest by World War I flying ace Captain Eddie Rickenbacker. My father retired from the Air Force as a Chief Master Sergeant, and I believe was among the first group of individuals to receive that distinguished rank. Dad was a hero. I never knew about my father's military history until I became a young adult and saw some of the newspaper clippings that Mom had kept. He just never talked about it. Dad, by the way, seldom went to church while we were growing up. He used to say he didn't want to be a hypocrite. I never really understood just what he meant at the time. One of my father's most notable accomplishments was to catch the eye of Miss Peggy Sharp. That's my mom. Mom grew up one of 4 kids in Mount Vernon, Washington, the daughter of Melbourne and Bessie. Grandpa was the bridge tender for a long since dismantled bridge that crossed the Skagit River in Mount Vernon. Grandma was from Ireland and had come to the United States on the Olympic, sister ship to the Titanic. The story goes that she was booked to sail on the Titanic, but for some reason had to change plans and make the voyage on the Olympic. Thank you God for unexpected changes in our plans. And to think that she was probably disappointed and maybe even upset about not getting to sail on the Titanic as originally scheduled. Mom was the greatest example of Jesus with skin on that I've ever known. I wrote that I have ever met. If you knew my mom, you knew that she had a supernatural love. The kind that puts other people first. The kind the Bible talks about where Paul says, if you've gotten anything at all out of following Christ, if his love has made any difference in your life, if being in a community of the Spirit means anything to you, if you have a heart, if you care, then do me a favor. Agree with each other. Love each other. Be deep-spirited friends. Don't push your way to the front. Don't sweet talk your way to the top. Put yourself aside and help others get ahead. Don't be obsessed with getting your own advantage. Forget yourself long enough to lend a helping hand. That's from Philippians 2, verses 1 through 4, and that was the Message. That is the way my mother was with everybody, the way she lived. Although there have been many wonderful people who have influenced my life, Mom is by far the biggest reason I was ever motivated to embark on this spiritual journey that life has to offer. Mom was a hero. So next we'll be going into chapter 1, Strange Stuff, and I'm going to cut this thing off for a second and turn the music back on. All right, we're back. I turned the record over. So chapter 1, Strange Stuff. The late 60s and 70s were a very interesting, significant, and sometimes crazy time to be growing up. With the assassination of beloved leaders and politicians, the Vietnam War, drugs, rock and roll music, the sexual revolution, hippies, the Jesus movement, there was no shortage of ideas, ideologies, philosophies, and adventures to consider and to participate in. I always wanted to be a hippie. It was probably the summer of '66 when my folks decided to take a car trip down the west coast of Washington, Oregon, and California, bringing along my brother Pat and me. It was a convertible, by the way. Our visit to San Francisco was my most memorable part of the trip. Never had I seen so many of these exceptional-looking people. In particular, I'll never forget the long, frizzy, red-haired mailman who was happily making his way down a hilly San Francisco street with his mail bag. I decided then that not only did I want to be a hippie, but also a mailman. I never did get to be a mailman, but I did have the mail truck. While at a Chinese restaurant in the city by the bay, the nice owner of the place taught Pat and I how to use chopsticks. Given my love for Asian cuisine and gluttonous nature, this has been a skill I've always been grateful for. Alas, I was born a little too late in the 20th century to really be a part of those strange and wonderful people called hippies. Sure, in later years I did grow my hair a bit longer, and I did live in a school bus along with my friend David and our 3 dogs during the senior year of high school. And there was the mail truck. Still, I was more of a wannabe hippie. As mentioned earlier, I was the youngest of 4 boys. Frankie, the oldest, was 12 years my senior. He had already spent a time in the Air Force and become a state patrolman by the time I was in my teens. Frank was responsible for our family owning a horse when I was just an elementary school lad. What a wonderful gift to grow up with Prancer, our gentle part quarter horse, part Arabian mare. Before I wanted to be a hippie or a mailman, I wanted to be a cowboy. Frank rode Prancer to my kindergarten class one day so I could give all the kids a ride for show and tell. I remember the principal even taking a little spin. A few years later, while in the 4th grade, I was asked by Mrs. Rowe, my old kindergarten teacher, to bring Prancer to her classroom again and give all the kids a ride. What a great excuse to get out of class in the 4th grade. Prancer didn't even mind making the trip to school on a road and across a freeway overpass that could sometimes have quite a few cars zooming by. Michael, who is 10 years older, took a little different direction in his career path. He was drafted into and spent 2 years in the Army. A few years after military service, he and a business partner opened Strange Stuff, one of the first, if not the first, head shop in Lakewood. Strange Stuff it was in Lakewood, Washington. Strange Stuff didn't market itself as a head shop, but rather a place where one could purchase modern home decor. Pillow furniture, water beds, air furniture, various pretty and colorful items from Mexico to decorate your home with, artwork, candles, incense, Kama Sutra pleasure balms and oils, jewelry, to include spoon rings, which were very cool, and of course, pot smoking paraphernalia. It was a head shop. Some of the artwork sold in the shop was a result of Michael's partner and his friends getting together all night with paints, canvases, and acid, the Timothy Leary kind. Not sure if they sold a lot of those paintings. The shop was within walking distance of the junior high I was attending. A few days a week after school, I would walk to the store and work, doing anything from building waterbed frames to selling hash pipes. Although I'd never used that pipe or a hash pipe at the time, I was getting my wannabe hippie fix just by working in the store. We typically had music playing in the shop, and it was here I became better acquainted with bands like Iron Butterfly, The Stones, Moody Blues, Cream, Sly and the Family Stone, and let us not forget the Velvet Underground and Nico. Sly and the Family Stone was in fact the first concert I ever went to, and it was during the Strange Stuff days. It was very cool to be seeing Sly and the Family Stone, but we were at the University of Puget Sound field house, sitting in wood bleachers, and rumor had it that Sly and the band were about an hour late because they were in the back watching Sanford and Son. I hope that wasn't true, but regardless, except for the feedback from the bass, it was a great concert and I was glad to be there. With the music mingled with smells of scented candles and incense, Strange Stuff was a very 70s kind of place to be. By the way, just last week, I was invited to and attended a Moody Blues concert in Seattle. They still had 3 other early band members, and I believe a couple of those guys are in their 70s. By this time, now we're a couple of years later, they're definitely in their probably late 70s. And I believe a couple of they've been together as a band for over 50 years. It was a great concert. Patrick is my brother the closest in age. We are 2 years apart. After he decided that I was perhaps more than just a nuisance little brother, we grew to be very close friends. Pat has influenced my life in more ways than he knows. By going before me, he was able to provide an example of some do's and don'ts, some things to avoid and some things to embrace. Also, with careful study of Pat's methods, I learned how not to get caught when embracing those things that I should have been avoiding. He sometimes got caught. I think it was probably Pat's love of travel and stories of his adventures that sparked the same wanderlust in me. Because my brother did quite well in school academically, and due to our parents' graciousness in providing a big chunk of the needed finances, he was able to travel to Europe as a student ambassador with the People to People program. People to People is a student exchange program that organizes groups of high school kids going to and coming from other countries. The program gives the students an opportunity to live with local families as well as to see some of the sights that a visitor really shouldn't miss. Pat had a more than wonderful time on his trip, and as a result, I too wanted to try and experience a similar adventure. He traded a ballpoint pen with a Russian soldier in Moscow for an awesome hammer and sickle belt buckle. How cool is that? Brother Pat was also fortunate enough to somehow, over the years, own some of the most beautiful old classic cars of anyone I know. All of my brothers seem to have a love for cars. Frankie, for instance, once had a 1940 LaSalle convertible. Beautiful. And later, a 32 Ford Model T. Michael owned a 56 Chevy, a 53 Mercury Monterey, and a 66 Corvette Stingray, to name a few. I still remember when Mike and his then girlfriend, later to become wife Sharon, brought me to the Puyallup Fair in the Monterey. I also remember thinking Sharon was way too pretty and nice for Michael. Pat, however, definitely took the cake when it came to cars. It started with him driving to high school, a punk kid in high school, in an orange 1957 MGA convertible. The MGA may have originally been Frankie's before Pat took possession and put some work into it, and until Michael later confiscated it and made it his own. Michael did teach me how to drive a stick shift in that car, which Pat probably wouldn't have done, so his managing to obtain ownership did work out pretty nicely for me. Michael also managed to get his hands on my Honda 305 Superhawk motorcycle with a sidecar, which I'd purchased from Brother Frank, and which Michael totaled when he crashed it into a fence. I have to admit that being about 14 years old and owning a Honda Superhawk with a sidecar until Michael obtained it and crashed it was pretty amazing. But back to Pat. After the MGA, there was an absolutely beautiful 1948 Nash, a super clean 65 VW Bug, a cherry 1950 Dodge, a 65 VW Party Bus, a 54 Nash Metropolitan, a super unique 47 Jeep Willys Overland, a 54 VW Bug with sunroof, totaled that one, a classic 56 VW Bug, and a 57 VW Carmen Ghia, which also unfortunately got totaled. Thank you God that Pat wasn't hurt worse than he was in that accident. The car ended up flipped over, crashed through a fence, and lodged into a house trailer. Oh, I forgot the 72 VW station wagon, the 48 four-wheel drive Jeepster, the 72 Opel GT, and a 50-something beautiful black convertible Mercedes. Pat definitely had some cars. But then I had a 64 Jeep Willys mail truck with Astromags. Once again, due to my parents' gracious willingness to finance the lion's share of the trip, and due to my adequate grades in school, how bad can you do when areas of study include band, leatherworks, physical education, and an English composition class called It's Magic? I too was privileged to take part in an amazing trip to Europe with the People to People program. Our It's Magic English teacher, Mr. Fleming, was actually a gifted magician and taught a great class. Also, Mr. Fleming had a bumper sticker on the rear of his car that read, "God bless Bob Fleming." I always liked him. Chapter 2, A Disturbing Dream. Probably a big reason that my brothers love cars so much is that my father was also a car guy. After a time from the Air Force and before he and Mom opened an auction house, what a fun business to grow up a part of that was. The stuff reality TV shows are made of these days. Dad was a car dealer. I would often spend time at the car lot with my dad after attending elementary school. Sometimes he'd bring me with him for meetings with other car dealers. Sometimes he'd bring me to lunch at the counter of Woolworths. I still remember ordering a cheese sandwich with mayonnaise. During that time, I think Mom was the secretary for the chaplains at American Lake Veterans Hospital. And that's right, one year I was an angel at the VA Christmas play. Just saying. Whether it was the car business or the auction, we all participated. Mom and Dad were very hard workers, and I know that they tried to instill that quality in their kids. From a young age, and about as soon as I found out that if you worked, you could sometimes even get paid and have money to do fun stuff, I held some kind of job. As a senior in high school, I was working after class and on weekends at a grocery store as a box boy, whatever needs to be done boy. In order to keep my longer than acceptable for the grocery store hair, I actually wore a short hair wig for this job. It looked terrible, and I can hardly believe they let me get away with it. My friend David had worked very hard the summer before our senior year, converting an old 50 school bus Brother Mike had obtained somewhere into a place where we could actually live. I helped a little, but Dave was pretty much the guy responsible for the plans and the bulk of the work. Dave's dad, I should add, was later the defense military attaché in Iran and a hostage when the American embassy was taken in 1979. I have to tell you that there's a misprint in the book that says 1978 that I'm so sorry about. It was 79. It was wonderful to later see Dave's dad come home. I think we paid about $80 a month to park the bus in the guy's backyard where we hooked up to his water and electricity and where the toilet emptied into a big hole in the ground. We put a blue chemical into the hole to reduce the aroma, the kind they use in an RV holding tank. Dave and I shared the bus with Bart, GJ, and Smokey. Good doggies, all three. The little bathroom in the bus was walled with thin cedar shakes. It was always an entertaining experience for one of our guests to use the facilities, as you could just about hear them breathe while they were inside the little cedar shake room contemplating life. It all added to the adventure. I think my folks, although probably a little hesitant about allowing their youngest child to live on his own while still in high school, also appreciated my desire to be independent. By this time in life, I had definitely learned how to use a pipe or rolling paper or whatever was handy, and was also becoming much more acquainted with what the world had to offer. At the same time, however, I still had a longing to know Jesus better. Mom was the one that always brought us to church, South Tacoma Baptist Church. And with my mother's loving example, which she demonstrated daily, together with a loving church family, I honestly did believe that Jesus was very real and that he really cared about me. I still remember Pat and me praying as little kids each night with Mom at the bedside. Jesus tender shepherd, hear me, bless thy little lamb tonight. Through the darkness be thou near me, keep me safe till morning light. Followed by reciting John 3:16, for God so loved the world that he gave his only begotten Son, that whosoever believeth in him should not perish but have everlasting life. And finally, God bless Mom and Dad and Frank and Mike and Pat and aunts and uncles and cousins. And I'm sure we threw Grandma and Grandpa in there, and everybody else in need of blessing. I believed that it was possible to talk with God at a very young age, and also believed that he was listening. While in elementary school, I had a little dog named Pug. She came with me pretty much everywhere a boy could walk or ride his bike. Pug even came with me delivering papers on my paper route. On a few occasions, I also delivered the papers on Prancer, our horse. The manager of Fur Acres Trailer Court was more than a little ticked when on one occasion Prancer left a gift on the street in the court, in which I didn't clean up. I was not a responsible horse-riding paper boy. The next time he saw me delivering papers on Prancer, he made sure that I understood not to ride my horse in his trailer court ever again. And speaking of Prancer, just yesterday I saw a post on Facebook from the brother of my old friend Warren. Unfortunately, their dad was in the hospital due to a very serious medical condition. I posted back to let them know that their dad was in our prayers and that I had so many great memories that included their family. The return post I received was that he and his dad had just been talking the night before about the time Warren and I rode Prancer through their house, in the front door and out the back. I can't really remember why we thought this might be a good idea at the time. I'm quite sure that Warren was there on that beautiful summer day at Point Defiance Park when we were flashing BAs out of the back of the mail truck. Come to think of it, he might have even been the one that instigated that little adventure. But let's get back to Pug. One day, some of my friends stopped by to visit and see if I would like to make the walk down the railroad tracks to the B&I Circus store, home of Ivan the Gorilla. Unfortunately, I was not home, but Pug, my dog, was. For reasons I never understood, they allowed Pug to make the walk to the B&I without me. It was about a 3-mile walk by way of the railroad tracks. They all went into the store and left Pug outside. When they came out, she was nowhere to be found. My friends made it back to our place only to let me know that Pug was lost. Well, what was a boy to do? I decided to pray, really pray. The kind of prayer that little kids who have no reason to believe God could not or would not answer their prayer prays. My dad came home from work that night with a surprise. At that time, he owned a car lot located a mile or two from our home and about 3 miles from the B&I Circus store, home of Ivan the Gorilla. Pug, who had never been to the car lot, made the 3-mile trip down Pacific Highway on a busy road where she'd never walked and lay down next to my dad's desk in an office where she'd never been. No lie. Do we have a Father God who cares about a little kid and his dog? I believe that I did. So here we were, 2 teenage boys and 3 dogs, living the high life in a school bus and able to make whatever decisions and do just about whatever we wanted to do. Then I had this dream. It was later in the afternoon and I was taking a nap in the bus. The dream was very short but also very vivid. I saw a white-haired man wearing a robe that looked as if it was flowing in the wind, quite biblical looking. He appeared to be up and among the clouds, and he was speaking to me. He said, "Tim, come with me. It's all right." While speaking, he was also gesturing with his hand to join him. That was it, and I woke up just after. What was so disturbing is that when I did wake up, the first thing that came to my mind was that this white-haired, ancient-looking old man inviting me to join him was actually Satan. No, I hadn't been doing drugs. This grandfatherly old man was someone you might even envision when trying to picture what God could look like. It was clear to me, though, that this wasn't God. It was kind of an evil versus good sort of thing, where evil was trying to make me think it was good. He was trying to fool me into thinking that following him would be a good thing. This is at least how I ended up interpreting the dream. Excuse me. I don't know for sure why I had this dream. I don't know what part God may or may not have played in the whole thing. I do know at that time I was a young man who would have told you he was a Christian if you asked. I remember as a little boy, probably about 7 years old, the morning at Sunday school when I asked Jesus into my heart. I remember as a young teen when I decided to be baptized, although truth be told, I probably wasn't really clear on why I was doing it. Here it was the senior year of high school, and I was still even going to church on most Sundays. At the same time, however, I was making just about zero effort to really get to know this Jesus I claimed to believe in. The dream brought to mind a verse in 2 Corinthians where it says, Satan disguises himself as an angel of light. It kind of scared me. Not long after, I decided that maybe it was time to make some changes. Also not long after, I packed up Smokey, GJ, an old antique rocker, and whatever other few possessions I had, and headed back to my folks' house. So that concludes chapter 2. And so that's going to be it for now. And I got to mention, Dave, who we lived together in this school bus, that was our senior year in high school, with our 3 good doggies. I haven't talked to for years and years, many years. Well, probably the last time we saw them was the marriage of his oldest son, John Thomas, who, by the way, was born on 7/7/77 and weighed 7 pounds and 7 ounces. Yeah, that was something. So we haven't talked for many years, and just a few days ago, I guess it was last week, I got a text message from Dave. And he and his wife are living not so terribly far from here, and we'll be joining them for dinner tomorrow night. And I'm thrilled and just can't wait. But, so having said that, maybe even today I'm going to try to work on episode 2, and we'll knock that out. And we'll have redos of both of them then, both episode 1 and episode 2. Thanks a lot for taking the time to spend with me here, and hope you'll enjoy hearing the audio version of A Journey. Adios.